the central bank digital currency. It's number one on my list because I think it represents the greatest infringement of individual rights imaginable. It'll give the Fed surveillance and control over all spending, savings, and debt. They could transmute your bank account into a central bank digital currency virtually overnight.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for June 27th, 2023 through July 4th, 2023 while supplies last. This week we feature Asahi Silver Rounds at $3.49 over spot, 2023 1-ounce silver maple coins at $4.25 over spot, and backdated 1-ounce silver Australian kangaroos at just $3.89 over spot. First, the Asahi refinery continues the legacy of famed private mint Johnson Matthey, which they purchased in 2015 and refined with the same attention to detail, cementing their status as an LBMA certified supplier. Their 1-ounce rounds are 3/9 fine and on sale for just $3.49 over spot. Next, silver maples were the first silver sovereign coins to be minted at 4/9 fine purity, and the 2023 silver maples remain one of the most in-demand coins today. They come 25 to a tube, 500 to a box, and are available at $4.25 over spot. Next, backdated kangaroos are 4/9 fine 1-ounce silver sovereign coins of Australia. They are renowned for their purity and design. They come 25 to a tube and with just 250 coins to a monster box. They are the most affordable monster box available, especially at just $3.99 over spot per ounce while supplies last. Our specials this week are IRA eligible. And if you'd like to learn more about a precious metals IRA, call us, and we'll be happy to help you in that process. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're delighted and honored to have this distinguished returning guest. Michael Rectenwald is the author of The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty, Unraveling the Globalist Agenda. He joins us this Monday, January 9th, 2023. Michael, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Oh, it's great to be here, Dunnigan. Thanks for having me.
I'll remind our viewers that I found out about you because you were appearing on Fox News. I believe it was the Laura Ingram Angle show, being interviewed directly there. And I heard what you were saying and the way you were speaking about your book at that time, the Google Archipelago, about the electronic world that has been prepared for us to kind of keep us in a digital prison and only show us information that we're supposed to have and only let us think thoughts we're supposed to think and only let us say things we're supposed to say and only interact with people we're supposed to interact with. And where that's leading, chilling enough as it was, I thought, gee, I got to get this guy on our channel to expose that. But since then, you've come out with a brand new book, which actually comes out tomorrow. Can you tell people what they will find out about in what's the one sentence elevator description of your new book, The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty, Unraveling the Global Agenda?
Well, what they'll find in this book is a scholarly treatment, fully sourced, completely validated in terms of the points I'm making, argument and exposition of the Great Reset, what it means economically, what it means politically, what it means technologically, what the deep agenda is, what has been afoot for really 80 years in terms of the globalist organizations. And I plumb the history of all those organizations and connect it to this Great Reset and all of the elements of the agenda, including the climate catastrophism, the population ethics, so-called, and the technological reset that is part of it. So it covers all that.
We want to get into the second half of your book, which is The Great Refusal, which you propose is our proper response of free people to such, I guess I would say, a toxic plan a scheme set out against us, against our better needs and the good of our families going forward, and how we can, you had a 9-step plan in there, and how we can refuse to participate. I did want to mention one more word of congratulations today. I understand that you've been named a Distinguished Fellow of Hillsdale University. We live not that far from Hillsdale, which has a long reputation for being a constitutional and classical education institution to really help people understand their true calling as citizens of the United States and how to live out that calling as a free people. Really tremendous honor that you have earned by being named a Distinguished Fellow of Hillsdale. So good for you, and doesn't change how glad we are to have you here, but just it's a remarkable honor, and congratulations for that.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, I'm really happy to join Hillsdale as a Distinguished Fellow, and to be speaking on their behalf, and to be, I'll be also putting together courses for their online platform. I know a lot of people take their courses on the Constitution and the history of the United States. So I'll be doing some courses on some of my areas of expertise, and also speaking on behalf of them at various functions. So it's a great honor, yeah.
One of the things to point out about that, and we've interviewed a contributor to the Epoch Times, Alex Newman, about this, is that just the shocking and really scandalous lack of education that our, for example, our government public education system provides in terms of people really understanding our Constitution, understanding the Bill of Rights, understanding the Declaration of Independence, understanding the basics, just the rudimentary basics of, for example, our coinage and money and true weights and measures and logic and reason and philosophy and all those things that are absolutely critical to functioning effectively as free people. So Hillsdale has been a standout, just really an example to other institutions, and really countercultural in basically a swamp of relativistic education. They've been at their feet on solid ground, and they're standing up and they're producing truly educated graduates. So it's great that you're going to be a part of that and helping bring that awareness about this very current and pressing phenomenon of globalist agenda and the Great Reset to that, and helping to educate students on things such as what are brought out in your book. So if we could turn to your book now and talk about, because our viewers are hearing on many different sources that they've plugged into on alternative media, which they're not going to hear on mainstream media, about the dire risks to their financial future, to their freedom, to their constitutional rights, et cetera, that are being usurped and infringed on by these globalist powers. And most people up and down the street are not aware of that to that extent, but our subscribers are, and they would like to know the next thing, which logically follows, and what do we do about it? So in your book, you address that head on. Could you take us through a description of your 9-step plan of what you call the Great Refusal, which is our calling in response to this Great Reset?
Yes, I mean, it's the 9-point plan. It's part of a grand refusal, which I think is the overall attitude we should assume, which is one of just refusing the policies and the prescriptions that the globalists have in store for us, and that includes, for example, rejecting. I think this is a primary one: is we have to refuse or reject the central bank digital currency. We have to skirt that. We cannot subscribe to it, and that means having currency in other places, having a means of exchange that is not controlled solely by the Fed, and this means effectively having alternative parallel economic structures in place. So I suppose for your viewers, they already know this means gold and silver, and this means hard goods that they can exchange, and to keep their talents, to bring their talents to what remains of the free market, and to exchange with like-minded individuals in that network that they have to construct. So that's a major element, is the central bank digital currency. It's number one on my list. because I think it represents the greatest infringement of individual rights imaginable. It will it'll give the Fed surveillance and control over all spending, savings, and debt. And they could transmute your bank account into a central bank digital currency virtually overnight. So you have to be prepared for that. And that means reducing your digital economic dependence. That means getting out of making sure you have assets and currency that is available for exchange outside of the digital footprint. So I won't give specific advice to individuals. That's not my role, and I know your show also refrains from that. But this is a general overall, conceptual and practical need that I think we all have, and so the CBDC is number one on my list. And then,
could I interrupt and ask one question about that? When we talk about refusing to adopt the central bank digital currency that may get imposed by edict, do you see paper cash as part of that refusal, or do you think that that's not what you're talking about? You're only talking about barterable goods that have intrinsic value.
I think I think the cash, the object is to outmode it. So I think cash will not be king. It's likely that cash could be largely outmoded, and it won't be necessarily legislated out of existence, but what will happen is it'll be refused by numerous vendors. This will become a trend. And, this whole Great Reset really depends on what they're calling public-private partnerships. And so these public-private partnerships mean that corporations are party to the Great Reset's execution. And so they're going to refuse cash for the most part, I think.
Many already are. We just returned from significant travels across the country. So we've probably covered 2/3 of the country visiting children and grandchildren over the holidays. And I was impressed in a disheartening way with the number of places which in the past would have been absolutely welcoming of cash. I mean, we were even pulling into the Grand Canyon National Park, and we said, hey, we wanted to try to, as a Christmas present, pay for the car behind us, whoever it might be, do a random act, and the park ranger there just looked kind of like deer in the headlights and said, you just scan your card on the machine here and it'll do yours, but you can't, we don't take cash. And there were just so many shops we stopped at, or even buying a coffee or whatever, when it says no, electronic payment only, no cash accepted. So that's already a major trend in place.
It's already a major trend, so I don't think cash is the solution. It's not going to be the solution. I think this means also stockpiling needed goods, even parts for your car. I mean, even elements that you wouldn't think of having duplicates of, so that you don't have emergencies where you can't get like a car repair because simply they won't accept anything but CBDCs or digital currency of one form or another. Most likely, and the Biden administration has made it clear that they're really pushing forth and pushing forward for this CBDC, and the Fed has been studying it, and it could happen very quickly. So we have to be ready for it.
So that was point one of your plan, is refuse and resist the central bank digital currency participation. What's next?
Yeah, part two is, number two is rejecting the Internet of Bodies technologies, the installation of devices in your body, the metaverse, and transhumanist technologies. And that means refusing wearables that are reputedly meant for health reasons. Now, that means any wearables that are reporting data to central databases. because this will be used against you as a means of control, as a way to exclude you from things such as even insurance, health insurance, and the refusal of personal carbon footprint tracking technologies, including those embedded in credit cards, and refusing other installations or medical procedures that could compromise your health and even compromise your genetic integrity. I'll leave it at that. I think we're safe there. Reject all these enhancements. They're going to sell transhumanism as enhancements, but it's a bait and switch. They suggest that these technologies will enhance you, for example, connect your brain directly to the cloud. But this will mean effectively giving over control to these transhumanist groups or organizations like Neuralink, for example. We talked about Elon Musk last time. Basically, this is in the future, but you still need to look forward to this and the various means by which they may make this possible. And the other thing is rejecting the metaverse. I know that a lot of people are already subscribing to this. The metaverse is merely a faux reality that they're using to basically supplant and compensate for the detriments of the Great Reset's world, real world, meat world, physical world deficits. And then, of course, I think I mentioned this, but I'll say it again, reject these brain cloud interfaces. Some of this is future oriented, but some of this also means, present, fairly near future prospects, I think. So some of the other things are, of course, they're now proposing to institute medical procedures that you might refuse for yourself on livestock, such that livestock will be transmitters of particular medical interventions that you may refuse personally. And some of these procedures might be self-spreading, so that you might refuse a medical procedure, but that won't stop it from being transmitted to you vis-a-vis another person who is compliant. So these are just some of the things that we need to keep our eyes on.
And it's interesting to point out that people who've been looking to Elon Musk as a savior of freedom and individual liberty, etc., because of his takeover of Twitter and reestablishing accounts there that had been deplatformed, etc., that another one of his businesses is Neuralink, where he's working on exactly what you just described.
Exactly. So. That's Neuralink would mean interfaces of your brain. They're calling it brain-computer interfaces, but that leads to brain cloud interfaces where your brain is effectively on the cloud. So that means that inputs and that outputs will be known, and that inputs could be directed to you from the cloud. So it's not as if a singular individual will be sitting there and saying, let's make Dunnigan think XYZ. It's just that this could block various neural pathways and stimulate others. It's all very possible. In fact, there was a recent article I was cited in the Epoch Times about this, and many of the neurologists that are involved think that, in fact, this is a prospect, and where you have basically interfaces with the brain that could preclude various kinds of thoughts and supply and supplant others with approved thoughts. So this is all very possible.
And thoughts is one thing, memories is another. It's been astonishing the extent and rapidity with which originally people became aware, some, that when searching for particular topics on, for example, Google as your search engine, you would only be presented with certain filtered results that have already been, to guide you to a particular conclusion. It's remarkable if you have inside information and you're aware that there's something scandalous going on over here, and you search from that, you may or may not even be presented with that. So that was number one. But number two was stuff actually disappearing from the history, so that you simply can't find it anymore. Links to articles, links to scientific studies, even journal, peer-reviewed journal studies and that sort of thing disappearing if they don't meet the modern narrative. So we've already seen the collective online, quote-unquote, memory or history being modified, erased, and people are concerned that our own ability to remember, people say, oh, the public only has a 15-second attention span or whatever. So whatever they present on the evening news is what people are going to be thinking about. And there's something to that. So even our own history and our own individual memories may be at risk.
Yes, that's right. One way I think about this is that basically reality is now a postmodern construction. They are really trying to totally curate reality by virtue of memory holding various things and accentuating others that follow the narrative. So it's almost impossible to find anything on Google about counter-narrative facts, counter-narrative theories, counter-narrative anything, really. It's very frightening. I mean, it's almost like you have a missing limb. You can't, it's like a phantom limb, really. You know it's there, but you can't find it. It feels like it's there, but you can't locate it. This is the kind of reality there. I think that this whole big digital is a kind of postmodernist. They're following the postmodernist constructivist ethos, really, such that they're constructing reality for us. And so, this has already been ongoing, but now they're talking about doing this directly on the brain itself. So, those are all prospects.
So your second point is refuse the internet of bodies. Don't get plugged into the net in any way, and don't have things put into your body that you don't want in your body. That can cover a lot of options. Leave that open to people's imagination. So what's next?
Yes. This is another one. It's refuse digital identity. So all these first points are about basically refusing all the technological enhancements that they're claiming are enhancements, but really are totalitarian in character. They'll be trying to roll out digital identity as a means of inclusion for those who don't have, there's like 1.1 billion people on the planet who do not have any identification. So they're trying to say that this means digital identity is a means of inclusion. But I think you should remember when they talk about total inclusion, this means totalitarianism. Anytime they talk about having the totality included, this is clearly totalitarian in character. So refusing digital identity is another major point of contention. Now, this will not be easy to do. And the digital identity will be connected to CBDCs as well. But this is a means, when I say digital identity, I make this clear in the book. Digital identity is not identification per se. It is a complete database of all online and offline activity, if offline can even be presumed to any longer exist. It is a complete database on all of your activities. And so getting a digital identity will be like subscribing to a complete record of all your activities, inclusive of all kinds of things like certain compliance with certain dictates. And I will leave it at that. We know what that means. So refusing digital identity is another one. Anything you want to ask about that, or?
Well, it just reminds me that, and this is tied back in some ways to the wearables and all that sort of thing, that people may already, if you've already got a cell phone, a smartphone in your pocket or on your hip or whatever, or a smartwatch or that sort of thing, a fitness tracker, you're already it'll be remarkable when a year later your phone presents you with, hey, here's some memories for you. This is what you were doing a year ago today or 2 years ago today. And there's the actual places you visited, even if you didn't take photos there, that your whereabouts have been logged, recorded on a central server, etc.
Yeah, I mean, this is already happening. So I'm not addressing water that's already gone under the bridge, because really it's almost impossible to turn that back. But the digital identity will close the circle completely. And that's what we need to watch. This is all happening incrementally. So again, it is likely to come through commercial partners, public-private partnerships, where first these commercial entities, probably banks, will be the first to roll out digital identity, actually. So we have to find a way to refuse it. It's not easy.
All in the name of preventing crime and terrorism, of course.
Right, of course. And that's the other thing, is it'll be a profile of you, a socio-political profile, which could have you pegged as a domestic terrorist or some other form of threat. This is very clear in all the Biden administration language about domestic terrorism and right-wing extremism and all that. Most likely, the digital identity will be used to profile people politically, likewise to make their exclusion all but inevitable, or even their punishment possible.
And my wife and I are homeschoolers of our 5 children, and we noticed two administrations ago, homeschoolers were included in the list of potential domestic terrorists and suspect watch groups because of their fierce independence and et cetera, et cetera. And now in the current administration, as you mentioned, even soccer moms and those who attend school board meetings and so on have made the list. So that list may be, speaking of inclusivity, the list of domestic terrorists, it looks like it's on its way to a very, very inclusive list.
Yeah, that's right. Inclusion, inclusivity. This is the watchword for totalitarianism. Absolutely.
What's next in your list of the great refusal, concrete steps we can take and make?
Well, this is a little bit broader, but it's this point 4, perhaps the most important, is to practice the free market in your own life. That is to eliminate dependence on the state, to disengage as much as possible, like from establishment institutions, including most educational institutions, to remain as entrepreneurial as possible, to have independent means of generating income. I know this is difficult, not everybody can do it, but you need to try. And then also this means establishing parallel economic structures, parallel systems, parallel social networks as well.
Yeah, we've interviewed some guests on our channel talking about exactly what you're describing and exhorting people to find out where the food producers are in their community, make sure that their skills are relevant and available to those around them, and find out who's got the skills in your community to help you out if need be, and make sure that we have a way of carrying on our family's business, things that we need to do without necessarily just relying on big box stores and anything that's government funded and so on. There's been some statistics that are pretty concerning about the percentage of households in the U.S. that are dependent on one or another form of government quote-unquote support. I know Candace Owens and others have talked about this as the new plantation, where you get people who were slaves had got free places to live and free food and stuff like that. So be careful what you ask for. If you think everybody deserves universal basic income or a free place to live or free government subsidies, we're just working our ways right back onto the plantation again.
Absolutely. This is another form of slavery, because once you depend on the state, then you must comply with the state dictates in order to maintain that income source. And that's a dangerous proposition. That's a trade-off of freedom for subsistence, and that is definitely not a trade you want to make.
Yeah, the first thing to go is privacy. The second thing to go is the freedom to make choices around that. Yeah,
absolutely. So Then I get into some of the economics, and of course the ESG index and stocks. We need to divest from ESG stocks and electronically traded funds that include ESG stocks. That means transferring investments into non-ESG reporting stocks and EFTs. And that also, I think, we need to consider assist in bringing antitrust. Now, this is relying on the state, but even Murray Rothbard said that sometimes you can use the state to try to dismantle the state. And that's the kind of situation we're in. I don't fall strictly along ideological lines here with this 9-point plan. I think it's necessary to note that we're in a grave peril right now. And likewise, we need to do whatever we can to consider taking class action against ESG investments, because they are monopoly schemes. As I've pointed out, I think before, this is a monopoly scheme. The ESG is it's a cartel. It's a cartel scheme that benefits the compliant and punishes and deprives of capital the non-ESG reporting corporation. This was made very clear by Larry Fink of BlackRock Inc. He said, basically, those companies that don't abide by the ESG will effectively starve. So we need to keep those companies alive by investing in them if we have the capital to do so. And to consider antitrust legislation against the ESG in general, because it's a monopoly scheme. And then I think also to remove your money from ESG reporting banks. Now, this is very difficult because most of the major players are ESG reporting. And like, for example, Brian Moynihan of Bank of America, he's a major player at the World Economic Forum. He's a major exponent of the ESG and the stakeholder capitalism, which is the system that the ESG implements. So we need to get out of these stakeholder capitalist organizations our money, starve these. Otherwise, you're feeding the beast, really. And I mean, I haven't done all these things myself yet, but I am in the process of doing them. And it's not easy because there are very few banks that aren't reporting and that are not investing on the basis of ESG. In other words, Moynihan said, effectively, if you don't meet the stakeholder or ESG bar, you don't deserve loans. You don't deserve capital investment. So we can't feed those companies, those banks. We can't feed those banks because they are in the business of starving out of existence non-compliant producers and companies.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what you had said. It's getting harder and harder to find, whether it's banks or any company to work with, to give your business to, that does not subscribe to this agenda that is toxic to the family, toxic to individual rights, toxic to property rights, etc. We had seen a report card for such a topic where a particular large grocery chain in our neck of the woods was given an F score, and we thought, because we didn't subscribe to the agenda that report card is based on, I thought, well, we should go maybe give that store our business, and we did for a while. But now, that was just a few years ago, and now they have flipped. And when you walk in the store, it is very clear. It is in your face everywhere you turn that they have. And it was sad because it's a privately held, family-owned company, but they've gone over to the dark side. So anyway, just realizing that people may have to keep. It's not a one-time decision. It's a moving target.
No. This is all a process, and it's an ongoing struggle. It's an ongoing counter agenda. Basically, there's a revolution underway. So what this grand refusal is not a revolution. It's a counter-revolution against these subversive elites that are implementing and imposing all these dictates on us. And then I say, put extreme pressure. Now, there's not much to trust in the state, but we need to put extreme pressure on government representatives to protect national sovereignty and individual rights, to divest and dissociate from the World Economic Forum and any of its tentacles. I think to withdraw from the UN and the World Health Organization, to withdraw state and other pensions from ESG stocks, and withdrawing from ESG investing asset managers such as BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard Group, and many others. Now, this is underway, this latter point, withdrawing state and other pensions from ESG stocks. Many states, primarily southern states, have begun to do this. They don't want their money, their state pensions, tied up with ESG investments, because ESGs are not providing the best net results for these people. They're being distributed for political reasons, and they cost a lot more. The fees are 40% higher for ESG funds. So this, we need to put pressure on more organization, more states, and national legislators to withdraw from these ESG investments, to get the state to divest from these organizations, from these funds, from the ESG funds.
I have two follow-up questions on this section. One is perhaps the most obvious, and that's, you say in some cases we can actually use the government, the tools that exist, the processes that exist to correct wrongs, things where things are going off the rails. There are actual processes we can use within the courts or within the legislature, whatever, to pull those things back in. The question is, with all this brouhaha that we've just been through, with like 15 rounds of voting that took at the Republican caucus to put together, selecting their speaker, Kevin McCarthy, and there's this within the Republican Party, there's this Freedom Caucus. People have been wondering, is this going to make a big difference? Did this midterm election make a big difference? The question I have for you is, do you look to the mainstream political parties or the mainstream political process as a significant factor in this great refusal? Or do you think that it's just very selectively in specific target areas where people can bring a lawsuit or whatever, that it may be useful, but in general that the system is lost, the swamp is too deep? Don't wait around for the cavalry to come from any particular party. What is your view on that?
Yeah, that says it in a nutshell. There are no political saviors here. They will not save us. Kevin McCarthy, for example, is a member of the World Economic Forum. He is a globalist. And so he has that agenda at stake. So what we need to do is cherry pick issues that we can have affected through legislation, through legislators, but we can't rely on them. We can't wait for them to do any of this. We need to put pressure on them, and hopefully they'll do it, but we have to do a lot of the actions ourselves. This is largely an autonomous movement. We need to do this and assume the responsibility for this largely on our own behalf, for ourselves. We can't rely on legislators, politicians, heads of state, but we can pressure them, we can push them, we can refuse to comply with them. So that's what we have. Largely, we must do this as an autonomous movement, but we can hope for and try to bring about some legislative effect.
All right. What's next?
I think this one's key, as we need to encourage defection of elites from the globalist agenda. And that is to say, there are elites who recognize the agenda as unethical, immoral, economically unsound, and we need to appeal to them with writing, letters, putting this plan into their hands. And this is not self-serving. I'm trying to get this plan in their hands so that they will undertake some of this themselves and make the movement, this counter-revolution, more visible. Because if it's invisible, it's going to be very difficult for this to get a widespread reach. So we need defection on the part of elites from the globalist agenda, and that is something we can encourage. I think Elon Musk represents the potential for this. Some potential. He's one. There's many others that we can encourage to defect from this agenda.
Yeah, you are touching on a big thing here, because earlier when we were talking about ESG intoxicated companies that are just going down that, marching to that philosophy, business results be darned. I mean, it doesn't even matter what happens to the stockholders or the customers or the employees. It's like, this is where we're going. We're railroading this through. You don't have any say-so about it. All this talk about stakeholder communities and inclusion, all that, but it ends up being edicts and saying this is the one way we're going to go. But the thing that we didn't talk about in that moment was you did. You said the southern states trying to pull their pension plans because these are underperforming funds. In other words, this doesn't make business sense in many cases. Well, it's not just business. There's the armed forces. It doesn't make any sense to go so distorted and twisted with your so-called inclusion that you compromise the mission itself. What was the actual mission? Same thing with government, same thing with lots of institutions that have been so distorted and perverted by this religion, if you want to call it that, this philosophy, that adherence to it. Earlier you talked about that you can use the state to dismantle parts of the illegitimate state. It's certainly been demonstrated that you can use language and the media and the color of law and so on to dismantle the constitutional state. I'm sure that's what the first half of your book treats in more detail, but it's certainly the case that the very ineffectiveness to accomplish the actual mission, it's like people have stopped thinking about, well, what is the purpose of a company, to make profit for its employees, shareholders, and customers, whatever. What's the purpose of a military? What's the purpose of a country with borders, et cetera, et cetera? I'm sure you addressed that in the earlier parts of your book here, but it's at least when challenged by relatives over the Thanksgiving table or whatever about why are you making a fuss about these things, that is something that's fairly defensible, that you can come back with and reply and say it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't work. It's against natural law. It's just ineffective.
Yeah, I mean, I go into that in great detail and depth in the first part of the book on the economics of the Great Reset, for example, and showing how dysfunctional and how basically counterproductive it is. It's incredibly so. And will lead in the agricultural sector to hunger and famine even, as they're trying to reset the agricultural industry to eliminate nitrates and all that. It's unbelievable. So, yeah, we need to point out these things. This has to be underscored.
Yeah, when it becomes sufficiently ineffective, but it's yet enforced, it becomes crimes against humanity. I mean, I remember we were visiting Washington, D.C. We were standing in line waiting to get into the Bureau of Engraving and Printing there and to see some of the mint and so on. And we were right next to the Holocaust Memorial, and engraved in the stone side of the Holocaust Memorial that we all should remember this, that it should never happen again. And you think about the Nuremberg Code that came out at the end of World War II, and you look at what just happened to us in the last 2.5 years as a people globally, and you say, not only is it ineffective from a business standpoint, et cetera, agriculture to feed our people, et cetera, but it's also causing risk and loss of life and on, things that are true crimes against humanity.
Absolutely. And there is an agenda here. There's a neo-Malthusian agenda to reduce the population. This is all part of the Great Reset. I trace the history of this neo-Malthusianism, that is the population ethics. And I put that ethics in quotes because it's not ethical at all. But they have had on the agenda for some time to reduce the population, and some of these elements of the Great Reset are definitely population reducing. They're population reducing functions. Yeah.
Okay, what's next on your great refusal list?
Well, the last point is to network with like-minded individuals and spread the grand refusal around. This again is not self-serving. We need to get the awareness out there. We need to network with like-minded people. This is part of establishing these parallel structures, but also to communicate broadly as possible and bring a larger network of people into the refusal. Because without numbers, we have the numbers, we just don't have enough subscribers to this counter-revolution. We need to bring in more subscribers to the counter-revolution. So we need to network and continue to build networks of refusal.
So that brings us back to your book itself, which comes out tomorrow. If people want to get their hands on it, how can they do so?
Well, there's two ways. One is you could go to Amazon, which, is not my preferred way, but it's there. It is cheaper that way because they have faster and more efficient handling mechanisms and all that I can provide. But Amazon.com, it's on there, but also directly from me. I'm selling it directly off of my website at michaelrectenwald.com, and it's a little more expensive, but you get a signed copy, and it's hand addressed and delivered directly to you from there. So michaelrectenwald.com.
We've been speaking with author Michael Rectenwald, also a university professor and now a distinguished fellow with Hillsdale University, about his new book that comes out tomorrow, The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty, Unraveling the Global Agenda. We'll put a link to that in the description of this video. And Michael, we've got to have you keep coming back on because you're staying on top of this as things continue to develop. You gave me a very small example of something in the current development that's just an example of something where it's just playing out the way you've cautioned people it's going to play out. Do you want to tell us that one before we leave?
Yeah, I mean, the Biden administration is suggesting now that they're considering banning gas stoves over so-called health concerns. That is basically, these stoves supposedly emit, greenhouse gases, so-called. And so they're now looking at possibly banning the manufacture and importation of appliances, of gas stove appliances. They're saying there's a hazard here and that they have a differential impact on people of color and Latinos. So now your stoves are racist here. Your gas stoves are racist. This is just an example. I mean, everything they've done to attack the majority is this will not help minorities at all. This will be actually costly. This will be detrimental. It's just another example. The other thing, of course, is what's been going on in the Netherlands with the farming in Canada, and we'll see some of that coming down here, where they're trying to, reduce nitrates and fertilizers with nitrates and all that. So more and more things keep coming out. It's all really part of this agenda. It's unbelievable how coordinated this is. And I know it might sound conspiratorial, but these people are definitely cooperating at a high level and implementing these things through unwitting dupes, most likely. They have people convinced of their agenda and the climate catastrophism and everything else. And so we'll see more elements of society impacted by these climate catastrophists as they try to effectively control all aspects of our lives, including, driving cars and you name it. It's all on the agenda here. So,
yeah, another example of a intrusion into your freedom is the new cars having an auto stop feature that the authorities can activate to make your car refuse to let you drive it should they decide. Of course, it's in the name of crime prevention, so they can shut down runaway vehicles, that sort of thing. But just wait till you say the wrong thing, think the wrong thing, go to the wrong website, search the wrong thing, spend the wrong thing going forward, and then your car won't let you drive it because you haven't, or your carbon footprint is the wrong shape or size or whatever.
Yes, your carbon footprint. You might be over your carbon footprint allowance, and therefore you aren't allowed to go anywhere.
Yeah, house arrest for you, buddy. Okay,
That's
well,
right.
Michael, thank you for joining us here again on Liberty and Finance. We're going to look forward to your next visit here with great anticipation.
Thank you very much, Donegan. Great to be here.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Donegan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.